Today we are going to continue from the topic, Did Women Have a Revolution? From the very beginning of the French Revolution, women participated in the revolution in large scale because they hoped that they will get political rights and freedoms like everyone else. Women did not have access to education or job training during this period. They wanted to have freedom and rights for education, for job training, and for other political rights, etc. Women were employed in different jobs and their wages were less than men during this period. Among the women political clubs, the Society of Revolutionary and Republican Women was most famous. Many political clubs were formed by women. Like the men's political clubs, women's political clubs were also formed to continue their struggle for their rights, their freedoms, etc. Among them, the most important one was the Society of Revolutionary and Republican Women. And this political club demanded many political rights. They demanded for equal political rights for women along with men. They demanded for right to vote, right to contest elections, and right to hold political offices, etc. During the period of revolutionary governments, many reforms were introduced, many measures were introduced by the government to improve the condition of women. Schooling was made compulsory for girls. Their fathers could no longer compel them to marry against their will. Marriage was made into a contract and should be registered under civil law. Divorce was made legal and could be applied by both men and women. Women could train for jobs and run small businesses. In this way, many measures were taken by the revolutionary government to improve the condition of women. During the period of Jacobin's government, women's clubs were forcibly closed down and women's leaders, those who were struggling for their rights, those who were demanding for their freedom and rights, were arrested and sent to jail, and many were executed. Still, the women's associations and organizations continued their struggle for their rights and freedoms, and finally in 1946 they won the right to vote in France. The next topic that we are going to discuss is about the abolition of slavery. Though there was discussion about the abolition of slavery in French colonies, the national government did not make any law banning the practice of slavery in French colonies as they feared the slave traders. But during the period of Jacobin's government or the Republican government, the Jacobin's government abolished slavery in the French colonies, and that did not last for a long time. The slavery was later reintroduced by Napoleon Bonaparte. The French traders from the ports of Bordeaux and Nantes, they carried out slave trade between Europe, Africa and Americas. From the 17th century, large number of European traders were engaged in the slave trade to solve the problem of shortage of workers in the plantations of Caribbean islands and in USA. The traders from the port cities of Nantes and Bordeaux, they sailed to Africa, and from there they bought the Negroes and they were taken to Americas and Caribbean islands, and they were sold to the plantation owners as slaves to work in the plantations. Through this slave trade, ports like Nantes and Bordeaux became prosperous and become rich. Finally, slavery was abolished in French colonies in 1848. The next topic that we are going to discuss is the revolution and everyday life. The French Revolution influenced the everyday life of the people in various ways. Their dressing and their way of speaking and also their lifestyle all were changed due to the influence of the revolution. Soon after the attack on Bastille jail, the first step taken by the revolutionary was that the abolition of censorship, and the revolution influenced the life of the people in their dress, food and reading, etc. Large number of books, especially the books written by French philosophers and thinkers like Rousseau, Voltaire, Montesquieu, etc. were published in large numbers, and the printed materials flooded in the towns and cities in large scale, and they reached to the villages in large numbers, and people began to read these books, and they were inspired by the writings of the thinkers and philosophers of France. And we can see that the last part we are going to discuss about the coming of Napoleon Bonaparte. We have already seen that followed by the failure of the directory rules or the conflict between the directors and the legislative councils, there was political instability which gave opportunity to Napoleon to become the ruler of France, or he took the power in his hand and he declared himself as the emperor, or he crowned himself as the emperor of France in 1804. And he introduced many reforms such as protection of private property, uniform system of weight and measures, decimal system, etc. in those regions which he brought under his control. Many neighboring kingdoms were taken under his control by Napoleon, and the people of these kingdoms thought that, or these regions thought that Napoleon was considered by them as a liberator, and they thought that they will be made free and a democratic system of government will be introduced. But Napoleon appointed his relatives, his family members, as the governors of these new regions occupied by him. So his administrative reforms did not match with the political system, or the administrative reforms did not match with the political expectation of the people. Finally, he was defeated in the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. In the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, and with this his rule came to an end. With this we can end this chapter, and with this we can finish this chapter, and we will see in the next class. Thank you.